As mentioned, I will present two clusters to you today in the next 15 minutes. Digital Industry and Space, Cluster 4, and Climate, Energy and Mobility, which is Cluster 5. I will start with Cluster 4. First of all, a quick overview again of the second pillar, global challenges and industrial competitiveness. So you know that there are 6 clusters here, and the ones I will talk you through are the ones at the bottom line to the left, so 4 and 5. So what are the main objectives of Cluster 4? First of all, is to ensure competitiveness of the economy and technological sovereignty. And of course, in order to achieve these objectives, digital revolution plays a major role, and you will see the digital theme coming very much through in all the presentation. Another very important issue for the European Commission is autonomy, particularly of some key strategic value chains, for instance, the batteries. Second point is focusing on the green element. So it's striving for climate neutrality, circularity, and sustainability in all technology solutions. And the third point is inclusiveness. So we do want a thriving economy, but we want to have an economy which is not only thriving, it's also inclusive, and it doesn't leave anyone behind. So as for the other clusters, also the work in Cluster 4, the scope described in the work program, is complemented by other elements in the ecosystem. And for Cluster 4, these other elements are 3. 2 of them were already mentioned, the other partnerships and the missions. And I will talk a little bit later more in detail about the ones that are relevant in Cluster 4. But specifically for Cluster 4, there's also another element which is called the Digital Europe program. This is a completely new program running in parallel to Horizon Europe, which focuses exclusively on the digital revolution. And this will be presented by my colleague Riccardo Scarinci later on today. So how does Cluster 4 contribute to the most important European and global policies and priorities? For sure, there's a big overlap with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And here I show the 4 main ones where there is a consistent or a significant overlap. But of course, there are much more overlaps also in other of the Sustainable Development Goals in the other ones. Of course, there is a big contribution to the European Commission Green Deal policy, which is one of the most important ones, one of the 6 key priorities of the European Commission. So that is central definitely to Cluster 4. And last but not least, the Paris Agreement, which is this international binding commitment to keep temperature increase below a certain level. So these are, let's say, the 3 big elements to which Cluster 4 contributes. Now let's go a little bit in the details to the scope of Cluster 4. As for the other clusters, the whole work scope is divided in chapters, we could say. They're called destinations, but effectively they are subsections, they are chapters of the overall work. And they're organized by, let's say, themes, more or less. In case of Cluster 4, 2 of these destinations relate more or less to industry, 3 of them to the digital part, and there is 1 which is related to space. So we'll now take you through each one of them briefly to describe what content is in each of them. The first destination is called Climate Neutral, Circular and Digitized Production. So this is about advanced manufacturing, so Industry 4.0 themes. It's about digitization of production, but also about the construction sector and also about the process industry. So 3 elements here: advanced manufacturing, Industry 4.0, construction sector, and process industry. Second destination is also related to industry. It's called Key Strategic Value Chains for a Resilient Industry. Quite a complex name, but essentially this is all about materials. And the 3 elements here, there's key, let's say, raw materials, primary raw materials, secondary raw materials, the difference being the primary raw materials are the one that we extract from the earth or from the seabed, and secondary raw materials are the ones that we recycle from waste or we recover from old products. So both of these are, of course, very key to the economy. And the third element is new materials. So development of new materials. These can be multi-component materials, composites, nanomaterials, coatings, membranes. There's really, let's say, many different opportunities here for novel materials which benefit society and the economy. The third destination is called World-Leading Data and Computing Technologies. This is, of course, focusing on the digital part, and this is related to the extent and the way that we use data for the benefit of society and the economy. And topics that are covered here relate to areas such as big data, data analytics, Internet of Things, cloud and edge computing. Okay, now moving on to destination 4. This is also one of the digital destinations. It's called Digital and Emerging Technologies. It covers actually a number of different areas, 9 key technological areas, most of them digital, such as low power processors, electronics, 6G and robotics. But there's also a couple which are maybe a bit more on the side of digital, such as quantum and also graphene, so also materials. Destination 5 is the one focusing on space. It's called Space-Based Infrastructures, Services, Applications, and Data. Space is the focus here. It's mostly about Earth observation and satellite-based navigation. These are the 2 big flagship projects of the European Commission, but there's also a lot about other technologies such as launches systems. And Destination 6 is about having a human-centered and ethical development of digital industrial technologies. How do we progress with our technology, both digital, but also the rest of it, in a way that we always keep the human element at the center? So with concepts such as privacy, such as cybersecurity and trust always in mind. Now, I mentioned partnerships at the beginning. So partnerships are agreements between the Commission and public or private partners in order to, let's say, align research efforts and multiply the funding effect. There are many of them in Cluster 4. I will not go through all of them. Digital has really a lot. You see some of them here. Some of them were also present in similar way in Horizon 2020. Industry has 3 related to factories of the future, let's say advanced manufacturing, that's the Made in Europe one, and the process industry. And there is also one for space, which was not the case for Horizon 2020, so that's a new addition here. Missions, there are synergies between Cluster 4 thematic areas and the missions. Some quick examples. Digital, of course, goes across everything, so it'll be relevant to all the missions. But Earth observation also has a big impact on monitoring our coasts, our sea, our land. So it's really also very important for some of the missions. As well as also the development of new materials and recycling also is very key. Okay, so just as a note, I share this cluster with 2 of my colleagues, Francesco Chienzle and Riccardo Scarinci. They take care of the digital part, and I'm responsible for the industry and space. So please get in touch if you have questions related to this cluster. So we move on now to Cluster 5, Climate, Energy and Mobility. Again, the overview, we now moved to the purplish bubble here on the lower line in the middle. And what are the objectives of Cluster 5? It's, of course, central is climate. It fosters climate action. And finally, it strives to climate neutrality and to decarbonize the energy and transport sector by 2050. Like Cluster 4, it has 6 destinations. I will go through all of them now. The first one is focusing on climate science and responses. So it's not only about knowledge, about how we predict, assess, and monitor our climate, but it's also about how to respond to it. And the response has 2 sides to it. One is mitigation, but of course, it's also resilience. How do we prepare for climate changes, the inevitable ones? The second one is a cross-sectorial destination, but most of the topic of the focus here is on the battery value chain. This is really key. Electrification is key to the energy strategy for Europe, and batteries play a key role. And the whole value chain here is addressed. So a lot of scope here for battery development. Destination 3 is about energy, and specifically about energy supply. This is a very big destination, a very big subsection of this Cluster 5. And it covers all the renewable energy systems. Of course, things like wind and photovoltaics play a big role, but there's really all sorts of renewable energy systems, even the most exotic ones are covered here. Not only energy production, but also distribution, storage is covered here. So grid, it's about production and it's about grid. Destination 4 is about now the energy use. So how do we use our energy in an efficient way? The big part here is about buildings. Buildings are again at the heart of the European Commission's strategy. They use a lot of energy, both during their operation and during their construction. So both these aspects are addressed here. It's not only about efficiency of the building itself once it's already existing, but it's about how do we actually build? What is the building process? How can we make it more efficient from a resource point of view, from an energy point of view? There's also another part in Destination 4 which relates to the industrial use of energy. But I would say the building part is the more significant part here. We then have Destinations 5 and 6, which relate to mobility. And number 5 is clean and competitive solutions for all transport modes. It really covers all transport modes, so road, rail, aviation, and waterborne transport. It's about making it more efficient, more clean, and essentially to reduce the impact on the environment and on the health. Destination 6 is again about mobility. It's about more designing multimodal systems, how to integrate all these different ways of transport together in a way that is efficient. And also a big focus here is, of course, on automated transport, so self-driving cars, automated urban trains, for instance, and how do we ensure safety and resilience of these systems. Candidate partnerships, again, many different ones here, both for mobility and energy. There's actually no directly relevant partnership for the climate part. So for the mobility part, there's partnerships which cover essentially all of the different transport modes, aviation, rail, even air traffic management. Some of them are follow-ups of Horizon 2020 partnerships, and you will recognize the theme. So it's really very well covered here. On energy as well, there's many. I only mentioned 2 which are very important. I talked about the battery and the focal point that it is in the European Commission strategy. So the idea here is we need to get the private sector involved if we want to succeed. And that's exactly the reason why a partnership was created here. And also very important, hydrogen. You haven't heard the word hydrogen in the energy part, but this is where all the scope for hydrogen will be in this partnership. Clean hydrogen, also follow up for Horizon 2020 partnership. And this will cover, again, the whole value chain from production of hydrogen to distribution to actually use. So for instance, if you have your technology focus is on electrolyzers, fuel cells, this is where you will find opportunities. Again, relevant missions. Definitely the Climate Resilient Europe is a very relevant mission for this cluster 5. It targets resilience. So the target there is to have by 2030 a Europe which is prepared for the inevitable climate changes, to the point that, let's say, we want to involve society has to be involved, the regions have to be involved. So it's really at a very local level even. And the second very relevant mission is the climate neutral and smart cities. The target here is to get 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030 that will act as lighthouse cities for others later on. And of course, to have a climate neutral and smart cities, mobility, energy, and climate resilience play a key role. So this is definitely a focal one here. And again, I do share this cluster with other colleagues, Linda Munger for the climate part and Riccardo Scarinci for the mobility part. So please feel free to contact us at your own convenience if you have any questions.